Hey everyone, hopping on here again with more continuing to dive into Think and Grow Rich in 10 minutes. We're talking about the principles as we hear on this middle of the week, in the middle of the month of June. We're moving right along here and we're becoming close to the first 6 months, the first half of the year. And as you start to look at where is it that you're achieving, when you go back to late December and early January, where you were expecting to be, are you where you expected to be? Or are you randomly allowing and be, well, you can just say taking whatever comes your way and just going for a ride and not really having a intended destination for the year? Are you tolerating circumstances that might not be what you would like them to be? And if so, what would it take for a shift towards doing the things that having the experience that you want, the relationships, the health, and the freedom? The key is freedom, freedom to be where you want to be, when you want to be, with whom do you want to be. And we start experiencing that on a regular basis. What would that be like? Do you ever spend time thinking of that? Perhaps you might have a belief that it's not possible. The question is not what is truth or what is false. The idea is, what is it that you believe, that you want to believe? And are you having that self-confidence to tap into the desire, the place you want to be, and really building that life that you want, the relationships, the health, the performance in whatever organization, whether you're the business owner, whether you're part of the leadership team, whether you're someone who's involved in an organization on a full or part-time basis, whatever that happens to be. Really, it's about serving others and leaving them better. And that's what these principles are talking about. And today, we have a really fabulous principle to tap into, that of persistence. Persistence is the eighth step of the principles as we move towards our goals. And this is very powerful. Persistence is something that, for me, it happens to be where I align more naturally than many of the others. And we all have certain principles that parts of them are going to be with us. The idea is to have all of them within us. Some do come easier in a natural way than others. And persistence is really the idea of never give up, keep on going. Quitters never win. The idea when it feels like everything is against you, there's no stopping us now. We're moving. And as you start to have some levels of achievement, we keep on going because we all have infinite potential. So that's where I really love to dive into this chapter. Persistence, the eighth step towards riches. Napoleon Hill talks at the beginning about riches do not respond to wishes. It's one thing to dream about it, it's another thing to experience it. Having wishes, and this is why the law of attraction, a lot of people are either talking about it or have heard about it, or for whatever reason, people have heard about the law of attraction. And the law of attraction, it's always at work, yet it is something that happens once we're in a vibrational state. We get into more of the science and the physics and some other chapters that we get to it. We all know that we see through light waves and we hear through sound waves. The nervous system in our body is connected to the brain, and we'll get into the brain as one of the principles in a future chapter that we study as well. But the idea that people can't just think about something and have it happen, there's no free lunch. How many people are out expecting an agency, an organization to all of a sudden just give them things without having to earn it? We have to be in action. We have to be serving people in order to receive a benefit. We do receive all the benefits and more, once we shift our attitude away from trying to get something from someone and we have the primary attitude of service. One of the great things in Andrew Carnegie's library, I'd suggest if you get a chance to go to New York, the Cooper Hewitt Museum. It's a part of the Smithsonian. It's in New York City. I think it's in the middle of Central Park, somewhere about one of the high 90th streets or something like that. I don't have the address exactly. I visited there, though, and it's a phenomenal place to go see how Andrew Carnegie, and of course, Andrew Carnegie was the one who helped get Napoleon onto the path through introductions of interviewing the 25,000 people who have achieved success in the late 1800s to the early 1900s, that gilded age of the US, and really started this whole process because Andrew Carnegie was the person who, he was the wealthiest person in the world, and he had this concept of take care of people because we're only here in our bodies a short period of time, but our mission in life is to serve other people. And matter of fact, along the ceiling of his library were several affirmations or auto-suggestions, auto-suggestion being one of the principles we talked about earlier. And the one that resonated most with me was, the highest form of worship is service to mankind. Said another way, the service to humanity is the best work of life, as the JCs talk about. And from there, he wanted to serve people and leave them better, and felt that everybody deserves to know, how do we show up in the way that we are being, so this way we can serve other people. And that's where it really comes down to. And persistence is the way we're going to get there. So riches do not respond to wishes. They respond only to definite plans backed by definite desires through constant persistence. So we have to have an awareness of who we are as a person. We have to be aware of why are we here. And then as we set the goal, a separate why is, why does this goal want to be achieved? Why are we growing ourselves so that we can achieve this goal? And there's multiple levels of why that we get into, and helping people discover their purpose, why they're here. And then also to keep in mind why having levels of success is important as opposed to why levels aren't. And we'll get to that a little bit more in this chapter. There's a great equation that willpower and desire equals faith. So the willpower is a strong force within our conscious mind. It gives us the ability to focus. How do we focus? One of the exercises that I help people to improve their focus is, say, for example, you have a candle. And if you can bring your eyes to focus on that candle, time how long you keep your focus before another thought comes in your mind. So try this out next time you have a candle. Look at that flame of the candle. Count to 5. Try counting to 25. Try counting to a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. How long can you go staring at that flame of that candle without being distracted by another thought? And this is one way to do an exercise to build up your power to focus. See, multitasking is a myth. We don't do many tasks at once. We do one task. It's like a computer program, right? This is a chip. It does one task and then it moves on to the next. However, it is rapid. And the same thing in our mind too. We focus on one thing at a time, and focusing on that helps to keep us in control mentally, emotionally, and being aware of who we are and where we're going. So your only insurance against failure, there's only one way to insure against failure, and that is persistence. It's what keeps you from succumbing to temporary defeat, because temporary defeat's always going to show up. There's always going to be, the loan didn't get approved by the bank, or, we had a promotional campaign and we did ads, and the ads didn't attract people for us to have more conversations with, whatever that thing might be. Or, and this, we're going to hear no. And of course, there's another conversation about sales, and no never means no. No is simply that it hasn't been enough clarity or value and connection alignment with where somebody wants to grow themselves to have a result that they don't experience yet. So Napoleon Hill goes on to that we can either look at obstacles, or you can be like Napoleon Bonaparte and said, when I see my goal in front of me where I'm going, all the obstacles in my way just dissolve. He had persistence. Where is it that you find that you might have strong persistence tendencies, or is there you lack persistence tendencies? Are you able to stop short at the first roadblock? How about the fifth roadblock? Where is the point where you might say enough is enough, or do you keep on going? So every adversity lies within it the seeds of its equivalent benefit on the opposite side. In other words, because there's a law of duality in physics that everything is an opposite, we can't have an up without a down. We can't have a right without a left. We can't have a hot unless there's the absence of heat that we call cold. And we can't have a top unless there's a bottom. Everything is that way. In our cells, in every atom, there's positively charged particles and negatively charged particles. There's opposites there, and they're equal in all places at all times. Within every good, there's adversity. Within every adversity, there's good. Question is, where is your awareness? In other ways, we go into lessons talking about what is it that we are aware of, and that what we observe. There's a observer's effect that is pretty cool. When you what you see as a result is what you're expecting to see. And the idea too that whatever it is that you set your mind to, you'll see examples of that along the way. However, we tend to sell ourselves short, and we tend to glorify and project, or we speculate as to what other people can do, yet we doubt the power within ourselves. In this chapter, Napoleon Hill talks further about the idea of building the self-confidence. And we have a self-confidence formula. If a self-confidence formula is something that you think you'd like to develop more, because there is nobody who caps out at their confidence. We have zero limits, infinite potential, and we can keep on growing our confidence into the idea that we have not done yet. And that's where life becomes magical for people. It helps us to nurture the concept and the principle of persistence. So persistence results from willpower, which mixes with intense desire, a combination that produces unshakable faith, certainty that one will attain the definite chief aim. Where is it that you're going? I know it's June now. It's not too late to really begin to use the power of your will, to focus on that, to be emotionally involved with the goal, and at the same time, emotionally detached from how it's going to happen. That becomes an area that we call hard work. That's where effort goes into, so that we can maintain emotional intelligence, emotionally getting involved with the goal as if it's already done, and at the same time, not being attached to getting things from other people. We really love and enjoy the desire of serving. So it's a habit. And because willpower and persistence, they're both part of the mindset, and it can be cultivated. That cultivated as we develop these habits. What I had some habits that you find that perhaps are not working for you. They might work for other people, maybe they're not. maybe what other people and the idea of having success, they've got certain habits, and those habits are what carry them to be different. Yet sometimes they're unconscious competence, so they're not aware of how they're doing it. If you really observe them and you ask them questions, they may not be able to answer you. Yet, if they say, tag along with me for a few days or a week or 2 weeks or a month, you'll start to see what are those habits and how are those habits different than other people. And this is one way of bringing those habits that you can cultivate for yourself and develop the concept of persistence. And going on that, Napoleon Hill writes that passivity feeds poverty consciousness, or one's tendency to focus on and thus invite more of limitations, inadequacies, and failure. Persistence requires a money consciousness, and it's a term really kind of broad that it could be easily replaced with success consciousness. As Earl Nightingale talks about in The Strangest Secret, what is success? Success is a progressive realization or progress, making progress, not perfection, progress being 1% better each day. And if you make progress towards that worthy ideal, your worthy ideal is that destination where we're going. And when we continue to do this, persistence is going to be our insurance policy and how we stay on track to where we want to go. So think of this for a minute. If we have two containers and you're going to pour some water down a tube, and there's two containers, think of your two lungs, the oxygen. Oxygen is going to go into the door that's open. Same with water. If water is sent down a pipe or a tube, whatever, there's two containers. One container is money consciousness. It could be health consciousness. It could be relationship consciousness, success consciousness. The other container is poverty consciousness, scarcity. It's not enough. It's somebody's not giving me this, or it could be there's too much sickness, or it could be any number of negative things. Those two containers are there. Water's going to go into one of them. And the question to ask yourself is, which door do you allow to be open? Whichever door is open, that's where the water will flow. And we can't expect one side to have the benefits there if the only door that's open is on this side. If we want to expect this side, then we have to have the door to the side open. If we want to expect this side, we have to have that door open, and the other one is closed. And this is a key, because Napoleon Hill will talk about the idea of keeping a mind that's so close to negative influences. And we'll get into these 4 rules for persistence and nurturing it. We'll get into that a little bit later in the chapter. One of the ways of diagnosing a lack of persistence is to face yourself squarely if you really wish to know who you are. Who are you? How often do you reflect upon that? Daily, at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day? Do you have a habit in the morning and a habit in the evening? Keeping yourself with a purpose, knowing who you are, a plan. What is the plan? And then action. Because remember, without action and no movement, it's all about wishes. It's not about making it reality. So when we have a lack of persistence, the symptoms used to diagnose are often synonymous with the causes. So in general, the tendency to give up easily stems from a poorly defined purpose and or vague plans to attach it. Someone's just going through the motions. Somebody, say John, is going through the motions of making phone calls or having appointments with prospective clients. They're just going through the motions, but they're not really believing in what they do, or they don't see the benefit themselves of what is that product or service that's going to benefit, a customer. And if people aren't aware of who they are and they're not aware of why, and they don't talk about the value or they don't talk about an outcome in a way that somebody else doesn't see, well, there's going to be a lot of roadblocks. And from those roadblocks creates an obstacle. From those obstacles, people quit and they say, oh, it doesn't work for me. When in truth, when we get to the root behind that, is that there was no belief in what it is somebody was trying to do in the first place. And because there's no belief, this is one area that people lack persistence. They just won't keep on doing it. It's like, Einstein said, the definition of insanity is when you continue to do things that aren't producing the results you want and you're expecting a different result. It's not going to happen. So that's where we start to, there's about 16 different areas to find, but why spend time diagnosing where there's a lack of persistence? Let's focus on the positive and get into the areas of how do we cultivate persistence. That's really the driving force for this short tips that I'm leaving you with here today. So one of the final traits in there's a fear of what others think. So there's 6 ghosts of fear. One of them is fear of lack of money or fear of poverty. And the other one is a fear of criticism and judgment. Do you ever find yourself that being really so afraid, what if this doesn't work? Am I going to lose money in this deal? Or what if this isn't the solution for me? What if there's a variety of different reasons you can come up with of why something won't work instead of focusing on what will work. And so the idea of also people won't step up in because they're afraid, they're not confident enough in themselves to separate themselves from what other people think. Do you ever find people who they're so concerned about what people think that they really never spend the time developing who they are as a person or their skills or the way they approach to life, health, relationships, and finances? They're so afraid of not being seen as different, so they don't step out of the box. And I always love to say, forget about just stepping out of the box. How can you live as if there's no box that's there? Creating that unique life and being that unique person, and with a big heart to serve and care about other people, yet we're not going to allow what other people think because of their level of awareness. So that's where people start to allow those fears to get in the way. And from that, specifically, they'll stay in a toxic relationship, or they're failing to return to school later in life to complete one's education, or continuing training programs, or diminishing one's happiness and chances for success in the name of duty. Failure to take chances in business. How do we stand out in the face of threats to do the right thing? This is where there's a crisis in leadership. Leadership will see a clear vision and can go towards something with the intention of benefiting all, not trying to only benefit themselves. And there's a distinction there when we're trying to benefit all, and there is no division. There is no putting people as black or white, A or B. And it's really about for the benefit of not just where you are in this whole global world that we live in, leaving people better. So to move on a little bit further, how do we cultivate persistence? As a state of mind, we can create and cultivate persistence to be much stronger. And there are ways to do that. And it comes down to realizing why are we here? Who are we? What are the real things? What are the strengths that we have? What are our weaknesses? Being aware of the weaknesses. Now, sometimes this is where it gets confusing. Some people's weaknesses can be stronger than other people's strengths. So when we have to look at ourselves, there's no comparison, no comparing to other people. Just looking at ourselves like on a scale of 1 to 10. And we did a great assessment at the Napoleon Hill Institute yesterday in our mentoring, or what we call now our Grow Rich Society, where we're doing an analysis on what Ralph Emerson talks about within there's a law of compensation, and just doing 1 to 10. Where are you on in relation to a number of things? If anything, you like to talk about that further, we do get into those exercises when we go into mentorship on a deeper level. For suffice it for now that we want to get that definiteness of purpose and look at the strengths of things that come easier for us, relatively speaking, versus the things that take us a little bit longer to pull together. And it's all about collaboration, stopping the idea of competition. There's no need to be competing when there's abundance out there. If you're choosing scarcity, that's where competition becomes the norm of the day, and that's where the fears and scarcity ratchet up, and that's where we don't have a mind that's closed against negative influences. So deafness of purpose, desire, self-reliance, how to be independent, how do we take personal initiative to go the extra mile, to offer more in meaningful value, benefit, and service than what we receive in cash value from the people where we work, and also for the people that we serve within our professional careers. We have a definiteness of plans. There is a plan. Now, quite often plans can change. Strategies and tactics can change, yet the goal remains the same. We want to have accurate knowledge. How do we think? You know that only 2 to 3% of people truly think, where 90% of the people have a lot of mental activity, but they're not doing any thinking. They're just remembering words that other sources and people have said to them, and they repeat that without truly thinking. When I have all of this knowledge and all of this information, when I start thinking about how those things come together and we build an idea, as we build the idea, how does that serve people in a good way? And that's where we come into the point of thinking. What would it be like we start thinking more, taking 30 to 60 minutes, 1 to 3 times a day to think, not to just look like we're busy, really think, and think about different ways that we can be improving ourselves, think of ways how we can increase the level of service to other people. Cooperation, collaboration, those things are very crucial. Willpower, I talked about the idea of how do we improve our focus. And habits, the habits are the actions that we do all the time, because you've heard in the law of cause and effect, as in science, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. What we do will find a way to come back to serve us, not directly from that person, because if we're just doing that, we're looking to get direct benefit from the person we give to. That's called trading, and trading is not genuinely rooted in service, which is detached from the outcome. We get into that a little bit deeper because that's too deep to get into in this short conversation. So some people are born with this natural predisposition towards persistence, and here are some of the qualities that we can use to cultivate persistence in a stronger way. 4 items. 1, we have a definite purpose backed by a burning desire for its fulfillment. 2, we have that definite plan and it's expressed in continuous action. Strategies, tactics might shift, the team, the collaborations may shift, yet the goal remains the same. The third is a mind strengthened against negative and destructive influences. And then 4th, a mastermind. A mastermind is the power of people coming together to ignite their thinking, to ignite their creativity and imagination. We'll get into the mastermind principle soon. Yet these 4 things are the way that we can nurture, develop, grow our persistence. Even if someone's strong in persistence, we can always be getting stronger. Even if we're experiencing abundance, it's it's not even scratching the surface for where we can be. We all can be doing more, health wise, relationship wise. And then there's 12 riches. Perhaps in the next lesson, I'll talk about the 12 riches as kind of a break within the principles before we pick up on following up to the 13 principles here. And this is the idea with Napoleon Hill goes on to say, influence in any form requires three major qualities: those deafness of purpose, focused effort, and persistence. And as we do that, people start observing and noticing that. And that allows us to, first of all, we're influencing ourselves. And then as others see how we're being, and we're being kind, and we're being generous, those things start to grow. And then before you know it, also it's effective in leadership modalities. We talked about leadership in the organized planning chapter. And just want to leave you as we get towards the end of this time together, action items in the habit of persistence. Here's one thing: if you cannot clearly state in one sentence your definite major purpose and your plans for obtaining it, now's the time to create your master plan summary. Doesn't need 10, 12, 15 pages of data and statistics. One sentence, maybe two, where it's extremely clear your purpose, who you are, here's the goal, here's a plan, and are we taking actions on those plans? How do we, at the end of each day, at the end of today's Wednesday, what are 3 things, maybe 5 things for me to do in action on Thursday? And when I wake up Thursday, going through a morning routine, we do that in a self-discipline camp where we really get into writing our purpose, our goal. We do meditation, we do auto-suggestion, and we study, within the various lessons. So this way we're getting guidance on top of that's enhancing those 3 to 5 actions that we have to do. And we look at that one task of behavior that you struggle to perform, those things that never seem to get done. Is that something that's aligned with who we are and our strengths? Or would that be something that through collaboration can be done for somebody else who has that strength? And so if we had that couple of things that are important, what is it that we can do to really find it to be stickable, create stickability, and take the actions, have the belief, align it all together, and grow the team? We start doing these things, and we remember that persistence is really about the character of humanity, where Napoleon Hill talks about the idea that persistence is to the human what carbon is to steel. That firmness, that strength that steel offers comes from the just the iron. It comes with the carbon and other elements that they forge together to create that strength and allow things to build. Same thing with persistence. We start keeping that persistence. There's no stopping us. There's no backing down. It's that that bulldog in the fight. It's just going to keep on going, and that's what we want to do. That ever ready bunny, keeping that energy going forward, being persistent. I've loved sharing this lesson with you, and love to hear your feedback. Where is it that you can grow in persistence? Whether it's working well now, how can it get better? And if there's a lack of persistence, what can you do to find someone to collaborate and cooperate together? You have a great day, and remember, keep going. It's only June. We've got 6.5 more months.